Hello, everyone. It's Tasha Danvers here, two-time Olympian and Olympic bronze medalist, and you are in for a great treat today on Global Sports Channel's Sports Personality Spotlight. I would like to introduce you to, and you may know him already. Hey, I don't know you, so I don't know, but you may know him already. And I'm just going to bring him straight into the show because I want him to tell you all about his fantastic life. Welcome to the show, James Devenny. Welcome, James. How
Thank you very
are
much.
you?
I'm excellent, Kat. Thank you very much for having me today. This is great.
Oh, absolutely. Now, I hear a little bit of an accent there. Where's that accent from?
My father's Irish, so he came out
Oh,
in 1975. So I
right.
think I've picked up I think I've picked up a slight bit of his accent over the years. And in his wisdom, he's now just turned 80, and he's decided that after 42 years of life, it's highly important that his son learns Gaelic. So we're in the process of learning Gaelic at the moment. So if there's any
Wow.
Gaelic listeners out there that want to practice, please do give me a call because I've got no one else to talk to.
I know that's the thing about learning a language, right? Like you can learn all you want, but it's hard to get it stuck in when you don't have anyone to talk to. So that's an appeal, everyone. That's an appeal. If you speak Gaelic, right, then give James a shout so you guys can have a good chat. That's something to put on my to-do list. So where are you now? Where are you calling from today?
In Bacchus Marsh, which is just outside Melbourne, Victoria, in Australia.
Right. Is that where you grew up?
No, I originally grew up in the Northern Territory in a place called Daly Waters, which is about 500 k's south of Katherine. So our nearest neighbour was about an hour and a half away at the time.
Wow. Wow. What was
Uh,
it like growing
yeah.
up? Because I'm a city girl, so what was it like growing up with, I can't imagine the nearest neighbor is like you take two steps out your door and there they are, like, oh, hello. What was it like growing up with
Yeah.
such, sparse in such a sparse place?
Yeah, look, it was pretty rewarding. Like there was, yeah, you could pretty much do anything and everything that you wanted to. You grew a very big appreciation for the land and just enjoying, the solitude and that. I have there's sort of an older sister, and I've got two younger brothers, and I've got two half brothers and sisters, which they live in Scotland.
Right.
And so grew up as a family, and we're fairly tight knit. You'd go to town, once every couple of weeks. We had situations because we ran a roadhouse up there called the Highway Inn. So you always had truckies and stuff coming through. So there was always people to talk to. Back in those days, it was sort of a lot more, a lot freer as far as gun control and stuff was concerned. So I think I reckon I learned to shoot not long after I learned to walk. So
Wow.
that just,
That's
you
handy.
know, um, yeah, and I got a lot of chance to interact with our Indigenous population. So grew to respect them and what they stand for and their culture and their love of the land and the way it looks after them. So it was
Wow.
a very opening experience from a very early age. So
Right, right. Now, you're obviously not on the show because you haven't done any sports in your life. You're quite the sporty person. Was that also something that you guys did as a family unit? Was that a family affair, or was that more of a James thing?
to start with, it was very much a family affair. As kids, we played basketball. So there's only a couple of year gap between myself and my younger brothers. So we all played basketball. I went on to referee basketball and eventually ended up refereeing just below the NBL in Australia.
Right,
So, and gave that up when I was about 24.
right.
I finished the game, and I remember the game vividly. And the referee's coach said to me, James, when was the last time you had your eyesight tested? And I said, oh, not that long ago. And he goes, it's just that a player just threw a ball at your head during the game and it just missed you and you didn't even flinch. And I'm
Wow.
like, okay, the eyesight's getting a bit bad now. it's kind of
Right,
time to retire.
right.
So so I pulled the pin at that age, and then started looking at other things that were around. So
Right. Well,
yeah,
you actually knew from quite an early age that you were going to have some struggles with your eyesight. I believe at 7 you were told that you had a disease that meant you probably would be legally blind by 21. On top of that, you had a
Mm,
teacher that told you you wouldn't amount to much. Like, how did were you able to comprehend what all of that meant, and how did that affect you
yeah,
emotionally? I mean, that's a lot for a 7-year-old to try and take on.
100%. So at the age of 7, like I hadn't even met a blind person, so I
Wow.
didn't know what they did. I didn't know the kind of people they interacted with. I didn't know what they did for a job. Up until that
Yeah.
point, it was sort of, I'm going to grow up. I'm going to have a job. I'm going to follow in my father's footsteps. I'm going to have a family. It's going to be 4 or 5 kids and all this sort of stuff. It's that to me was what was normal. And then to suddenly
Right.
get told that you're totally blind by the time you're 21. I'm thinking, what is that? What is
Right.
that? And there was a movie I watched, which was actually the story of the first ever guide dog, which would happen to be a German Shepherd. And that was the first time I'd ever come across anyone that was blind in a movie.
Right.
And I'm like,
Right.
okay, right. So what does that look like? So from that point on, like it was pretty sort of opening, very confronting, and had to sort of make some pretty early career choices. So at the
Right.
point in time, technology is not what it is today.
Yeah.
And I had to really stop and think about what did I want to do. And the only 2 career paths that were available to me at that point in time was law or accounting. They were the only ones that actually had technology that I could actually utilise to do what I wanted to
Right.
do. Up until that
Right.
stage, I was going to be a marine biologist, or like a typical boy, I was going to be a fighter pilot, and I
Right.
had all these aspirations of all these different things I was going to do. And as it is, I'm too tall to be a fighter pilot anyway, so I never would have qualified on that regard. So that's okay. So,
Right. Right.
but so yeah,
Was
and
that
then
tough? Was that a tough
yeah,
pill to swallow? Like, you want to go one way and your body's saying, no, you're not going to go. Was that tough, or did you kind of just,
yeah,
gl-
yeah.
how
No,
was that?
it was pretty full on. I went through a very angry stage
Right.
as a kid, especially in my teens.
Yeah.
Sort of trying to battle with that, trying to understand what it was like to be different, losing some of my eyesight, dealing with the different types of glasses and stuff I had to wear. Really sort of coping with all that. And that's when I started getting into martial arts, and
Right.
I started,
Right.
starting to train there, and really found what I enjoyed, and at the same time was really into basketball. Still had a lot of eyesight, so I enjoyed the fitness, I enjoyed the running, and then when I got into refereeing, it taught me a whole new world. It taught me how to communicate with people and to try and develop that empathy because when you're talking to a coach and he's down 2 points and it's a semi-final and he wants to win and he's out of the box and he's going off, you know, you've got to be able to stand there and take that and then say, hey mate, let's reframe this. Let's talk about what's going on here. This is
Right.
what I've seen from this angle and this is what it looks like. And hey, look, maybe the next call goes your way. I can't promise you that, but all I'm doing is my best out here. Yeah. So it was just
Right.
that taught me so much being a basketball referee, and to the guys that helped me develop over that time, a huge thank you, because there's so much of that I now carry in my day-to-day life as a business owner. So
Right, absolutely. Do you think that your experience, because I'm sure, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, I'm sure at some points you felt sort of misunderstood as you were going through what you were going through, because I'm sure, like you, there are probably plenty of kids who didn't
mm,
know what it was like, or, to be becoming blind. And do you think that gave
mm.
you more compassion and empathy, like in that role as a referee, because now you understand how someone else might feel about what they're going through? Was there any connection there from your experience to what you were putting into your craft?
Yeah, look, there's always I suppose really the major connection for me didn't come until probably about my mid-20s.
Right.
Because you're 18, you're still dealing with a lot of your own issues. You're dealing with going to university. You're
Yeah.
dating and all that sort of stuff's going on. And then in about my mid to late 20s, my son was born, and I was grateful that I was able to see the ultrasounds and see him and see his face and
Yeah.
everything else. But it started to go through a pretty dark spot, because I'd gone through a situation with a boss where he thought it was great that I was blind, because he basically used to tell me that I was the only accounting firm that would actually give him a job, or give me a job, sorry. And, so therefore he felt he had something over me.
He's doing you a favor.
And yeah, he was doing me a huge favour. you know, and looking back on it, he did me a massive favor because,
Right.
you know, to get the guts to walk away from him and say, okay, thanks very much for your time. You know, I've learned lots under you. However, another accounting firm has just headhunted me. I'm going to go join them.
Awesome.
And the other firm I was with for 18 months. And they promised me a spot as partner. And after 18 months, weren't prepared to deliver. So I'd already had the guts to say, you know what, I'm better than this. I'm better. I can get past all of this. And as a result, I then started Devenny Payne. You know, so I walked away from both jobs and started this on my own. And like at the time, my wife and I, we just bought a brand new house. So we've just taken the keys to a brand new house. My son's 18 months old and I've chucked my job in. I've got nothing to go to. I've just walked away and going, you know what, I'm going to do this. I'm going to run this myself. I can't do any worse than what these other guys are doing.
Right.
And, you know, Devenny Payne was born. And what my wife found at the time was the stress of work and just the loss of eyesight that had happened in that sort of late 20s stage had put me into that sort of state of depression. And so she got me involved with the Paralympic Committee. And so I met Tim Mills, and Tim took me down to the Frankston training track where I met John Eden, which was the throws coach at the time. And he now heads up throws in New Zealand and runs both Paralympic and Olympic teams. And so he started me on my journey as a thrower. And for the next 2 Olympic Games, I trained as part of the Paralympic training squad, you know, and that was just meeting people with cerebral palsy and amputees. You know, I met a lady called Michelle, and she was taking the bins out one night after work, and someone lost control of their car and crashed into her, and she lost her leg, you know, so all that was going on for her. And these people were getting past all this, getting past the cerebral palsy, getting past, you know, all that going on.
Right.
You know, so
sounds like someone's calling on Skype.
Yeah, there's calls going everywhere. It's just crazy. So Teams calling and my mobile phone's calling. I'm like, oh no, you just want to be quiet.
Hey man, you're a well sought after guy. We just got to roll with it.
100%. So, but yeah, going through all that, and just meeting, you know, all the different guys that I trained with, and seeing how they overcame what they did, and just helped me reframe what I was going through, and going, you know what, I'm not. There are people out there worse off than me. Yeah,
right.
You know, there are people out there that are doing it harder than what I am, and it just got me to pick myself up and just continue to work forward. One of my favourite memories is of my son. So we're training with a guy called Don Elgin, and he was a pentathlete, and he'd taken his throwing leg off and had just put his running leg on. And we've got photos of my son who's about 4 years old at this stage, and you know, so he grew up around the Paralympic community and he's sitting there trying to figure out how to get Don's leg to attach to his leg. You know, sort of. You know,
it's brilliant.
Even having children for my wife and I was a huge decision because, you know, obviously knowing what I'd gone through, not wanting to pass that on.
Right.
You know, and so going through the genetic testing and really understanding all that, it's just in some instances my eyesight has been a hurdle, but in other instances, it has been one of the greatest godsends that I've ever received, because the advancements in technology that the firm's made, you know, has allowed us to question, okay, how can we do this differently? How can we do this better? What can we do? You know, what does all this look like? And by bouncing off my business partners, you know, Krishan and John, you know, and sort of talking to them about that, and then trying to build an organisation that surrounds the clients, you know, to try and help them cope, you know, through running their businesses on a day-to-day basis. You know, it's meant so much, you know, but it's also helped shape my philosophy when it comes to staff, because I've seen what other firms do. You know, they have these ridiculous KPIs on people, and you look at that and go, they can't influence this information. How can you hold them accountable for something they can't influence? That's not fair.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm on my soapbox. So sorry.
No, I love it. This is what we want to hear, because this is your life, and this is what we want to hear about. I was thinking as you were talking about the courage that you had, because a lot of people in your shoes wouldn't have had the courage to walk away. I mean, the fear would really overcome them of, you know, if I walk away, how am I going to pay my bills? If I walk away, what about this? What about that? And they just wouldn't be able to do it. Where do you think that courage was? It just like, listen, it's the bottom of the bottom. Where did that courage come from to say, I can do this on my own? And if I fail, oh well, I'll keep trying. Where did that come from?
Well, that's from Natalie, my wife. She basically, we sat down, we talked about it. She'd seen what I'd done for 2 other businesses where I worked as an employee.
Yeah.
And she said, James, she goes, worst case scenario, is in 12 months' time, if you're earning the same income today as what you were working for them, but you're your own boss, then we've
Right.
succeeded.
Right.
She also said to me that, that I was still, and she reminded me that I was still young enough that if anything went wrong, I could go back to work and I could pay off the debt. And yes, look, we would struggle, but we would get there. So having her full support and encouragement. And as I said, it was Natalie that went and did the research around the Paralympic team and who to get in touch with. And, because she knew I loved my sport and she knew how much I was missing it. So it was all that. And that came from her. And, and that's where, she's been my courage. She's been my strength all the way through.
That's fantastic. And I love that you bring light to that, because I think that a lot of people try to do things on their
You
own,
there,
but
Kat?
it is, sorry.
Hello?
Hello, can you hear me? Testing,
Hello?
testing. I'm here.
Oh, there you are.
There I
Gotcha.
am.
Sorry.
That's okay. No, I was saying I love that you bring light to that, because a lot of people feel that they can, listen, I can do it on my own, I don't need any help, and they think that the strength is in trying to do everything solo, do everything on their own. But I think it's so important to have great people around you, really supportive people around you, because everyone's human and we won't always have the courage or the strength to pick ourselves up out of whatever dark space or place that we've found ourselves in. So having that is really important. Now, I want to talk more about the diagnosis itself. What's the name of it and what's the journey? Because there may be people out there who have that and maybe they're afraid, just this cloud looming over. When is this going to become fully legally blind? How quick will that progress? Tell us more about that diagnosis itself, and what was the
Yeah.
journey with your eyesight?
Yeah, so it's called retinitis pigmentosa.
Right.
I have a lot in common with the Irish setter. So the Irish setter, the dog, actually suffers from the same condition,
Right.
which is where a large amount of funding actually comes from for the research, which is quite ironic.
Wow.
The chances of me getting the actual disease was a 1 in 100 million chance. So I've actually got
Wow.
better chances of winning the lotto in Australia than what I actually ever had of getting this.
Wow. Wow.
So it was a huge,
Incredible.
huge windfall. Yeah.
Yeah. I'll
So,
say.
so look, as I said, up until sort of mid-teens, like being diagnosed at the age of 7 is really early. But at that stage, my eyesight was at the stage of 50-year-olds, is where it was at the age of 7. That's how far advanced I was. Normally, someone doesn't get diagnosed until sort of late teens, early 20s is a typical sign. And what is usually picked up is they usually start to suffer from night blindness first. So you struggle with shapes and you struggle with being able to see at night time and in dark areas and alike. And then over time, it goes to what's called a tunnel vision. So your peripheral vision disappears, and you just have the central spot is what you normally see out of. It's quite hard to sort of pick because of the fact that you got both eyes compensating for each other. So for me, I know there's black spots in my vision. I can't actually see them, but I know they're there. I can watch, if I wanted to, I can actually watch my hand pass in front of my eyes and watch it appear and disappear as it passes through the black spots.
Right.
And then to give further analogy to it, so when you look at the sun and directly at the sun and you look away and you get those bright flashing lights in your eyes, I've constantly got that. It's constantly flashing away all the time. And then the other part that's sort of trying to add some shape to what I'm describing is if when you're looking through fog and you sort of see that haze, or you're looking, and you struggle to make shapes out in the distance, that's constantly in front of my eyes. So I've got these lovely flashing lights. I've got this foggy mist that's in front of my eyes. And basically when I look at anyone, they're pretty much a silhouette to me these days. So things that and it's amazing the things that you learn to appreciate. So,
Yeah.
like, I used to love gazing into my wife's blue eyes, and just looking at her, whereas I can't see her anymore. So therefore, but I still have memory of that.
Right.
The picture that you see behind me is one of the last pieces of artwork that I ever remember seeing. And my wife bought that for me for Christmas one year. And we saw the original version of this artwork at an exhibition in the Melbourne Gallery. And when I was standing in front of it, I basically lost 10 minutes of time. I was drawn into the picture that much when I was standing in front of it at the time that I could hear the sights and sounds. I could smell the smoke. I could hear the noise and clatter and all that going on. And it was just a picture that just took me away. It was one of the most amazing things I've ever come across in my entire life. Like, I've stood in front of Van Gogh and some of the other great artists, and I looked at their work, and look, it's fantastic, and I love their brushwork and everything else. But this picture here drew me into the scene, drew me into the chaos that was going on in that daily life back then. And so Nat gave it to me for a present one year. So it was made, and she got emails every week showing the update of the actual artist creating the painting and building the whole thing from scratch. So
Wow, that's amazing. So do you hold on to a lot of memories like that just to kind of keep just to keep, because you can't see anymore, but just to keep those vivid images? Do you hear me?
Hello.
I'm here. Check, mic 1, 2. I'm right
Yeah, we
here.
dropped that again. Sorry.
That's okay. That's okay. So I was saying, do you do that a lot with past images and memories to kind of hold on to your site sort of in a internal visual way then, because you don't have the external visual anymore?
Yeah, well, what we've found is even today when I'm doing training with staff or doing explanations with clients and the like, I spend a lot of time writing on whiteboards. I still visualize everything that I do. So even with karate, which is my, I've gone back to that love, and I'm doing karate and judo now. And what I'm finding with those is I have to visualize the movement before I can actually get my body to do that movement. So I'll go through, and when someone's instructing me, it'll be a situation where I want to know exactly where your hand needs to finish. I want to know exactly what shape the fingers should be, and the line or the arc or whatever's happening in that particular move, so I understand exactly what's going on.
Right.
All those things, take shape. And what I then do is, so I'll go through a kata. It takes me about 2 hours to learn a normal kata. And once I've got it down, then I start going through the intricacies of it and trying to understand, what does that hip movement feel like? What does your weight feel like when you're doing this? How does all that come together? So
right. So you've done basketball. I know you did a bit of rugby. You've done a bit of track and field. How did you get to karate?
Well, actually, originally started karate with my dad, and we did a Chinese form of karate at the time, which was Sanchi Kai, and that's where we started. And then when my son decided that he was going to study karate, I thought, this would be cool. It'd be good to share something with him and do something together that was just for him and I to bond and enjoy being together. And so Sensei Wayne and his team down at Shindo, with Senpai Annie and Sensei Max, they took me on and they introduced me to Senpai Rodney. And originally we started off as private lessons, and then eventually Senpai Rodney and Senpai Stewart agreed that I could join the normal classes and started to train as part of the normal classes. And eventually, just got more and more into it and more inspired, and tried out for the Victorian team, and I went to my first nationals. And after my first nationals, I was in the car on the way home, and I got a phone call from the selection committee, and they told me they'd watch me at nationals and offer me a spot on the Australian team. And so that first, it was just amazing. I was blown away because I actually lost the round that they watched, and I made a mistake in what I was doing. I'm like, did you guys watch the same thing I was watching? Like, are you for real? And And
Were
so
we at the same match?
yeah, 100%. Yeah, like it's weird. It was, just and I was so blown away, and I was just in absolute awe. And I rang my wife, and I was like, "Nat, you never believe I've just been offered a spot on the Australian team." And she's like, "So what does that mean?" I'm like, "Well, we're going to New Caledonia, and we're going to spend a week there training, and then in November we're off to Spain to the World Championships." And it was just amazing. So, and in New Caledonia, I trained with Sensei Frank, and the kata that I was working on is called Basai Dai. And for a whole week, we just did that one kata. We pulled the whole thing apart and we put it back together piece by piece. And at the time, one of the biggest things we focused on was the lines, because each move has to be done to a certain direction. And,
Right.
So the first thing we had to get right was to get those lines consistent. And we spent days just working on getting the movements and getting the lines heading in the right direction and everything else. And by the end of that week, it didn't matter whether I started off facing the wrong direction or whether I missed an angle or anything like that happened. And I was back dead on center. And Sensei was saying, he kept saying to me, he goes, "James, I don't know how you're doing it." He goes, "Somehow you're back on point every single time." And it was just, it was like this, it was like there was like a compass, that was pointing north every single time. I had to find my way back to where I needed to be, and just managed to find it. And so then we went to Madrid, and that was just a whole new experience. To walk into a stadium and there was just thousands of people, competitors and spectators, and there was people there like Jesse Enkamp, which is someone I'd only just come across on YouTube. So listening to him and seeing him compete, or listening to him compete. But on the night of actual competition, we've gone down and we're in the holding room and we're training, and I've got, the guy from Japan on my right side and the guy from Russia on my left side, and I'm listening to these guys go through their katas, and I'm like, okay, I'm so getting my backside handed to me tonight. This is just going to be... But there was 20 of us in total. So just to be among that 20, and the sensei walked up to me and said, "James, how do you feel?" I said, "Yeah, look, I feel nervous." I said, "But I've worked my goals out." And that's one thing John Eden, my throws coach, had taught me was, "James, work out your goals so you can work out goals of satisfaction." And so we're there, and I said, "Look, ideally, I'd love to finish top 10, because that means I'm in the top half of the pool. So I'm like, love to finish top 10. And then I said to him, I said, "Look, if I finish within the top 5, top 6, top 7 of my pool, that's a whole new goal. That's fantastic." And just full on. And so we go out, and Nat's on the floor with me. And I remember walking out, I'm sitting there, and Sensei Steve, he's there giving me my final instructions, and we're talking through, and he's just, "Enjoy it, James. Enjoy the moment. Soak up what's going on." And there's photos of me with my head bowed and him standing there talking to me. And I get there and I bow and I go on and announce my kata, and I go through and I bow. So I finish the kata, and I start hearing the scores, and that, there's 7.5, there's 7.6. And I'm like, wow, scored awesome. Yeah. And so I'm standing there, and I get off, and as I turn around, the whole Australian team is lined up along the back of, up in the stand, but lined up along the back of my mat, and they start yelling, "Aussie, Aussie, Aussie!" And I started yelling back to them, and it was just, 100%. It was just awesome. And then my brother from Scotland had flown in, and we didn't even think he was going to make the match. The next thing I hear this Scottish bro yell out, "Hey, bro!" And so I'm yelling back to him, going, "Mate!" And it was just full on. And so we're standing there, and Nat leans over and she gives me a kiss, and she's telling me how proud of me she is. And then she goes, "James, you've just finished top 4. I'm like, "What?" And she goes, and up on the board, and I'm like, "Are you serious?" Which left me ranked number 6 for the tournament. So I went into this tournament, probably ranked outsider. I've never competed at an international level. First time international karate, and finished top 4 in my pool and top 6 overall. And I'm just like, "That's nuts. Are you serious? This is fantastic."
I know, because you're just flippantly well, I guess if I have to focus on my goals, maybe top 10 will be nice. And then here you are, just making history.
And so after later on the meet was in there, and Sensei Marco, they're talking to me, and they said, look, James, you did really well. We've got a couple of years before Japan, so if we keep working, there's a chance at Japan, going to compete in karate for Australia. I'm like, oh, amazing. And then it was announced that the Paralympic Japan wasn't going to have karate. I'm like, okay, that's cool. And then so we're like, okay, so that's fine. We've got France in 2024, and I'm like, that'll be awesome. And then the French cut karate, and I'm like, are you for real? Like, wow. That's not fair.
Yeah, it's a little bit disappointing, isn't it? What did they ever give a reason for that? Why they cut, your sport?
No, and the interesting thing was they cut it before it was even ran. So normally you find that the event is introduced in one Olympics, it's carried through to the second, and then if it's not going to go on, it's usually cut by the third event. But
right.
France hadn't even given it a chance to run, and they'd cut it, and I was just like, wow. I was just blown away. So,
wow. But they do still
last year.
Do they still have the World Championships? Sorry.
Yeah. So at the moment we've got them scheduled in November this year for Dubai, which they were supposed to be in Dubai last year, but obviously with COVID and everything else, that all got cancelled and shut down. So at the moment, the Australian team has got us training for that. But at the moment, my main goal at the minute is this Friday and Saturday. My son is going for his black belt, so I'm sort of trying to help him prepare as much as I possibly can between now and sort of Friday night, and make sure he's ready. So he'll go through 2 days of training to qualify for his black, and go from there. So that's my big goal at the minute, is just doing that.
So on that subject, number one, I've got two questions for that. Number one, was your son there at that moment when you had that really great moment at the World Championships when you had the 6 overall and the 4? He was there for that. Yeah. Oh, fantastic.
Yeah, he was there. My family traveled with me, and because I needed someone to assist me all the time while I was over there, my son got the chance to travel as part of the Australian team. So he got to come backstage behind the stadium, and he was down on ground floor, and he was at all the training events and everything. Like, my wife and I went to New Caledonia, just the two of us, and my father-in-law and his wife came down to look after the kids. And that was the first time we'd actually had any holidays away from the children. So that was a big thing for us to go away for a week.
Right.
But Lockie, he got a huge, he got to travel, and so going through all the security with a special pass and feeling like a bit of a celebrity as he walked into places, and he had a special shirt and stuff he got to wear, and
he was the man.
He was that, and like, he's only 15 now, and he turned 16 at the end of the month, and he's only just shorter than me now, so it's
wow.
And
that's tall.
And in his own right, like, he was competing in karate. He'd been national champion himself, so he's done really well. And at the moment, he's just so fast. It's fast and powerful at the moment. She's got so much speed and power. It's just amazing.
And what's his name, in case other people want to follow him as well, follow his career?
Lachlan Devenny.
Lachlan. Okay, so we'll be looking out for the next karate star, Lachlan. So
it's just a natural athlete. So he's just amazing.
Well, he's got good genes, so there we go. You spoke about him going for his black belt. Now, my knowledge, because I used to do a bit of taekwondo when I was around his age, actually, but my knowledge of karate isn't that great. So I know somewhere at the bottom there's white, somewhere at the top there's black. Yeah. What's the levels in between, and where are you at in your progress?
Yep. So there's about 6 or 7 belts in between. So you go from white to yellow, yellow to green, green to blue, blue to purple, purple to orange, orange to brown, and then on your brown, there's 3 gradings that get done on your brown, and then you go for your black, and then it's down grading after that. So I got my black during COVID shutdown.
Nice.
So that was an experience and a half, and then now. Once I get my son through, or helping him get through this weekend, my next focus is nationals, which are in August, and then World Championships, which is November, and then after that, I then will, because you got to keep myself fit the whole time anyway. I'm focusing on my first stand grading. So
Nice.
Uh,
So you said it was an experience and a half. Tell us about the half.
yeah, so November last year, I approached Sensei, and he had approved me to go for. So this is November 2019. He'd
Yeah.
approved me to go for my black belt, and I was eligible in April.
Right.
We went away on the 25th of February to America, and we travelled and met up with my brother, and went to do Disney. And so the whole time I was away, I was training. I had to keep myself fit, because part of the 2-day training session is you do this combination called 1 to 30, and it starts off with 1 push-up, 1 sit-up, 1 squat kick. And by the time you finish, you're doing 30 push-ups, 30 sit-ups, 30 squat kicks. So you do about 465 of each, and you've got 50 minutes to do the lot.
Wow.
And yeah. So
Intense.
yeah, 100%. And like, because I as a junior, when I was in my teens, I did my black belt twice, both as under 16 and then over 16, in 2 different other styles. So, and that was just a very different experience. But so I came back from America on the 13th of March, and at that stage, the full COVID lockdown thing hadn't happened. And so I was still training, and my grading was due to happen in April.
Right.
And then, so keeping yourself fit. And by that stage, I was getting the training time down to 40 minutes. I could get the whole lot done in 40 minutes. So I was pretty stoked. Times were on track. And then it got pushed back because obviously COVID happened. So we weren't allowed contact sport. We weren't allowed any of that sort of stuff. So the dojo shut, and we went to online training. And so Sensei and his team ran Zoom, and we did online training sessions. So then it was scheduled for June. And then June came, and about 2 weeks before we were due to grade, we couldn't grade again because we still weren't allowed contact. And obviously part of the black belt grading is there's a lot of full contact in there with throws and takedowns and combinations. So it got pushed back again to August. And then eventually, the COVID restrictions lifted enough that in October, we actually got to go for that. But by this stage, you'd been training for over 12 months. So it was 12 months from the date that I last graded, which was April 2019, to the first chance of black belt grading. And then you just train through. So the whole time you're doing this intensive training, you're training sort of 6 days a week, and you're going through all your moves, your katas, keeping yourself fit for sparring and takedowns and knife defense. And you're doing this combination, and you're constantly training for this. At least once a week, you're putting yourself through the clock and making sure that you're still under 50 minutes and you're still doing it easy enough. So when you actually finish at the end of the 2 days training, you can make all this happen. So
Right.
And that was just, for me, that was just a huge mental toughness thing. You had to keep going. And I got to the stage where it had been pushed back that many times that even the week leading up to it, I was still waiting for it to be cancelled. And I remember I started doing the 1 to 30 at the end of the day. So I'd work a 10-hour day. I'd go home. I'd spend some time with the family, and then at 8, 9 o'clock at night, I'd go, okay, it's time to go out and train. And so we'd actually turned our double car garage at home into a full-blown dojo, so I could train at any time I wanted to, with split system air conditioning systems and everything else, to make sure that I had no excuse that, okay, it's too hot, I can't train. It's too cold, I can't train. So it's all soundproofed and it's all set up, and so there's never an excuse. And we did that leading up to the World Championships. So we had all this set up, and so at 9 o'clock at night, the last thing you want to do is go out and do a 50-minute training program that's going to knock this. Because you're doing, as I said, you're doing 465 push-ups, you're doing 465 sit-ups and 465 squat kicks, and by the time you're finished, you're just fatigued.
Exactly. I don't want to do that at 2 in the afternoon, let alone 9 o'clock at night. God.
And so I remember getting there one night, and I'm like, I don't want to do this. I'll get myself through to 10. And I got to 10, and I'm like, I'll get myself through to 20. I got through to 20, and what I found was on the night, because it's on the Friday night when you do it, and by the time you do it on the Friday night, you've been training for 4 hours solid, and it's about 10 o'clock at night when you actually go to do this routine, and you don't, you're just exhausted, and the last thing you want to do is do more. And by the time you actually get to that time when you go to do it, because of the penalties and stuff that get dished out during the training, you've done 200 push-ups prior to doing all this. So it's a full mental and physical break you down, get you ready type situation. And I remember when I was training for it, going, I don't want to do this. And I thought, when you get there on the night, you're not going to want to do it. You've been training for 4 hours, you're not going to want to do it.
Yeah.
And so I went, okay, you've got to train through this. You've got to get, and sure enough, when we did the grading, because there were still restrictions, what Sensei did was he set the whole grading up outside. And so we're training outside. And about 45 minutes into the grading, it starts raining. And Sensei's like, that's okay, we'll train through. Just, And so we're training through, and we're training for a couple of hours in the rain, and I'm absolutely drenched. And he goes, right, now it's time for the fitness component. So we drop and we just start. And by the time you finish, your gi is soaked all the way through, you're freezing cold, and you've got to do this. And I managed to finish it in 42 minutes. And I was so stoked that after all that, I got through, and it only took me 42 minutes to do it. And I was like, yes! So, but,
it's all worth it.
Oh, 100%. It was worth it. And I'll do it again tomorrow. And hence the reason I'm just so excited about the next one. So
nice. I love it. And we'll definitely be rooting you on in November. Come November, come your World Championships. Now, I want to backtrack a little bit to your career, because like you said, you only had two choices when you were coming up: become an attorney or become an accountant. Talk about, because I'm sure that some of the athletic mindset probably helped you, but talk about that journey of becoming the accountant you are today, because I'm sure, again, other athletes, other people who have situations similar to you can draw strength from the journey that you took, because you're strong in business and you're strong in life and you're strong as an athlete. Tell us more about that.
So I had the two career choices, and found that when I went to uni, I was really enjoying my law subjects, and that was great. But what I also found was I had a passion for economics and for business. And so within my first 6 months of being at uni, I then made a decision, because I just went in as a standard business degree at the time, thinking that I was going to specialize in law.
Right.
And because, the law, I grew up watching the likes of Perry Mason, and watching the courtroom dramas, and and then Ed was a huge fan of, so grew up watching all that, and but found that in my teens I'd actually discovered an interest in the stock market. So understanding how that worked, listening to the Warren Buffetts of the world, sort of getting my head around all that, and I found that with accounting, it seemed to involve so much more. Like, people sit there and go, oh yeah, you do numbers. No. That's just the basics. Accounting looks at economics. It looks at the legal aspects of what's going on, and how can you help people? How can you make things better? What's available? And so originally, when I went into accounting, I thought, it's one of those careers that once you learn your craft, that's it. But boy, was I wrong. Accounting has challenged me every day of my life since I actually took it on. And, I find I listen to so many podcasts, and I'm always reading on new technology developments and, ways to help business. And through the athletics and karate, I think I've learned so much about what it is to understand how to run a business. So when I sit down today and I talk to someone about investments, and I say, okay, let's look at the purpose. Why are you investing? What is this going to do for you? Is it income? Is it capital? Is it a combination of both? The same as when you're doing training. Why are you doing this training? What's the purpose behind that? How does that work? And then when I sit and look at a business today and I say, okay, how can I help the owner be better at his business? What can I do to make this better? And so then you look at the business and you go, okay, if I can influence that net profit line by 10%, how is that going to help that person's life? Right. But to get 10% turnaround on any one level in a business is extremely hard, because how do you do that? You can increase the prices to your clients, you can get more clients, you can sell the clients more services, but sometimes your sales isn't necessarily the be all and end all answer. So you might go, okay, part of the strategy is to increase sales by, say, 2%. But then the rest of the strategy might be looking at your costings and saying, okay, if I look at my costings and I can save 8%, and I might save 0.25% here, and I can save 0.5% there and 1% here, suddenly you've got that 10%.
Right.
And so as a result of that, that then moves the business forward. If you can improve someone's debtor days by 1 day or by 5 days can have a huge impact on the cash flow of a business.
Right.
For instance,
Right.
With our company, if we went back, say, 5 years ago, we carried a large percentage of our turnover in debtors, and we carried a large percentage in work in progress.
Right.
Now, because of the way we engage our clients, because we try and spread the fees out over the year, it's done several things. Number one, we're very much upfront with what our pricing is. So before you even start working with us, you know what it's going to cost you.
Right.
But then instead of us saying to you, right, you need to pay this up front, we say to you, look, how about we break it down into monthly installments or weekly or fortnightly or quarterly? Put it on a payment term. So for us, that levels out our cash flow because we're constantly got money rolling in without having to actually go and do automatic invoicing. So what we found was 95% of our clients is actually on direct debit. They're happy to have their fees paid off over a period of years. So you've got that constant influence and ability going on. Because the other thing we found was when we weren't engaging the client up front and we were doing the work and then we were invoicing and the client was getting a $3,000 or $4,000 bill and they're like, hold on a second, I thought it was only going to be, or
I don't even know you.
Pay you. And, yeah, 100%, yeah. And what we were also finding was we were paying someone to collect the money. So we were actually earning the money twice because we did the job. We then raised the invoice and then we had to go and pay someone to go get the money in that we were already owed. And it's like, well, hold on a second, that's not fair.
It's not working out, this plan.
Nah. And so whereas now, by the system that we've got, it works for everybody. It's allowed us to do capacity planning for our staff. So on the 1st of July each year, the guys know how much work do they need to do for the year. What does their workload look like month by month? We can say to clients, hey, we'll schedule your work in for this particular month and know that we can deliver on that. So it's had this huge flow-on effect, and that's all come from like the training. When you're sitting there throwing a discus and you're like, okay, the qualifying distance for the Paralympic team is X, and you're at Y. How do I close that gap?
Right.
And you close that gap by each training session, and it might only be a centimetre, but each centimetre goes towards what your target is,
matters.
and you're constantly trying to improve that. And so a lot of that philosophy we've actually been able to adapt and found there is a place in business for these philosophies, and a lot of that is what we're finding is working really well for our clients. Like one of the best numbers that I've ever had out of the whole, time I've been an accountant. So I've been an accountant for 22 years. At the entire time, my favorite number is number 1. And what I mean by that is during COVID, we got $19.8 million of funding for our clients from the state and federal government for our clients. Right. Awesome number. But that number 1 is we lost one business to COVID. Only one business said, James, we are struggling to stay alive. We're going to have to close the doors. And that was one business out of 700 that went to the liquidator.
Wow.
That for us is a sense of achievement. That's just incredible.
That's in sports, that's definite win. Definite win.
100%. I think, and that's the thing. It takes 1 point to win a game. It sometimes takes 1 or 2% in order to make a business thrive as opposed to a business not. There's just, in 2018, I went into partnership on a law firm. This law firm was losing money, and we sat down and we analysed this law firm. And my business partners Ben and Shane, which is Aspire Lawyers, have helped us turn that business around. And their teams have just done amazing work. But it's been one step at a time, and it's been one small win after another. And the team over there are just amazing. They've gone from a business that had Melton and Werribee as offices to, they've got Melton, Werribee, Geelong, Melbourne, Perth, just exponentially in that short space of time. They've gone from a business that's losing money to a business that's making money. And as I said, the management team over there are just doing an amazing job. So
that is fantastic. So basically, I mean, whether you're a sports person or not, if you draw from the strengths of sport, the philosophies of sport in anything you do, particularly in business, it's going to be a win. I have a tricky question for you though, James. I want to know if all those games of Monopoly you played as a kid helped you with your career.
Who told you? Who told you about Monopoly?
Google University.
Yes, Monopoly was certainly a big learning curve as far as my business career was concerned. Yes.
Absolutely. I love that. Cool. Now, you use your life and your story to inspire, to motivate others, and particularly to inform others. Well, how are you doing that now? Is it just through your example? Or are you involved in any organizations or charities or anything of that nature?
I sit on a couple of boards as not-for-profits
Yeah.
and donate my time to do that. And I love working with the teams at the animal shelters and that I work with. I love working with my business clients and helping them learn about what else is out there and opening up people's eyes to what's new. I've spent a fair bit of time with Rotary and have really enjoyed my experience with that. But at the moment, for me, my biggest focus is my kids at the minute. My kids are my family. Spending time with my 15-year-old son, who turns 16 this month, my 7-year-old daughter, Annabelle. She did karate for a while, but found that it wasn't her thing, and has taken up gymnastics and has shown a huge flair for that, and is really coming to life as far as it's concerned. So spending time with them. But look, I'm happy to talk to anybody. Happy to sit down and have a chat. Happy to talk to people about what they're doing and just understand. Sometimes you can say more by listening than what you can by opening your mouth.
Absolutely. I love that. And I was just watching a clip today of an Olympian doing rhythmic gymnastics, and I love gymnastics. Any time I went to the games, I always wanted to make sure I caught the gymnastics. So I'll be looking for your daughter in the future. Two final questions for you, James. Number one, I wanna ask you, what is it you want the world to know? And secondly, in terms of what you want to accomplish in life, if your life mission, at the end of your days is accomplished, what would you like to be able to say you've achieved?
Yeah. So to answer number one, I suppose the biggest thing that I'm a big believer in is those who are doing well should help those who are doing less, not so fortunate.
Yeah.
So like, for instance, with us, we donate 1% of our total turnover to charity on a yearly basis. And the reason it's 1% is because it's a fixed number. 2% of our total payroll is invested in our staff for training. 10% of our profit is set aside for staff bonuses every year, regardless. By helping those that help you, you give back and you grow. By lifting everybody up, it just helps so much more. I think while we're on this topic, I have to give a big shout out to Xero. What the guys have done there with their software have revolutionized the business industry. And if you're not on board, you should be on board as far as that's concerned.
Right.
Okay. But so number one is give back, help where you can, and pay it forward. If someone does something good for you, then help somebody else out, And some of the times it's interesting, you don't actually know where it's coming from. So I may do a good deed for, say, yourself, but then it could be down the track, 3 years down the track, that someone helps me out. So karma is a big thing in life. And if you help people out, it will come back.
Right.
And that just, helping people. That's what's important,
Absolutely.
So,
absolutely.
My biggest achievement, if my life was finished now, certainly is my family. I love my wife, I love my children, and what they've helped me achieve has just been amazing. Outside of the sport, outside of the business, they are probably the biggest success that I can certainly boast to at the minute. But having said that, if I can help one person and I can help one person change their life for the better, and if it means that I sit and talk to someone who's visually impaired and help them, understand tools that they can use to make their life a bit easier, like people have helped me with things such as like I'm learning guitar, and helping learn to read sheet music and stuff like that. When you can't see it is extremely hard. There's software out there to do that. Never let something get you down. People. What I find in life is that the biggest hurdle people have is themselves.
Absolutely.
You know, like I got friends that left school and did
100%.
trades. Yeah, I got friends that left school and did trades, you know, and could have been real successful at what they did, but they let themselves down. And I hear back from those people, you know, a couple of times a year, and they say, "Hey, James, you know, you're so lucky. Everything was given to you on a silver platter." And I sit there and I go, "Are you for real?"
Is this some kind of joke? Is there a candid camera around here somewhere?
100%, yeah.
Oh my
But
God.
that's people's biggest hurdle is themselves. So
Yeah.
look outside yourself. And sometimes you'll find by helping someone else, you'll learn that much more about yourself than what you will about, you know, your own disability. As I said, people's personalities is sometimes their biggest disability. I don't see my eyesight as a disability.
Absolutely.
You know,
Absolutely.
it's not. It's part of who I am, but it's not what I am. You know, so as I said, if I can help one person, whether it be, you know, here in Australia or whether it be internationally through a charitable cause and help someone, you know, then I've been successful.
I love that. On that note, I have one sneaky bonus question. I know that a lot of people, like you said, see being blind as a challenge or a deficit or, you know, whatever label you want to put on it. But how has being blind or legally blind blessed your life?
I guess for me, it allows me to see what's not there. And that sounds quite ironic, because a lot of people look at what's happening or look at where they are and go, okay, this is the way things are because this is the way things have been all the time.
Yeah.
But I don't actually have that restriction. I don't actually see what's there. So, for instance, one of the carters that I've been working on is called MP. Now, MP has a 360-degree jump in it. And I looked at that, and when, you know, I spoke to some of the people that I train with, and like, James, how on earth are you going to learn to do a 360-degree jump, mate? How are you going to pick up the rotation? I was like, I don't know. But look, I've got to be able to break it down. There's got to be a way of doing it. And now I can actually do it and land a 360-degree jump. All because I didn't stop and go, okay, I can't see how to do it, so therefore I won't do it. I looked at them and went, there's got to be another way to teach my body how to do that. Right. And that's what I'm saying. So by not actually having sight, it's allowed me to challenge so much of the status quo and to challenge so much of what's going on in life that, you know, it's allowed me to develop better as a person. And I think as a business person, it's really helped me frame what do we want to offer our clients? You know, we want to be that trusted person, but everybody wants to be that trusted person, you know. But what we want to do is we care about who we work with. We don't want people to feel like they're being taken advantage of, because I've had people in my life try and do that, you know, and the last thing I want to do is pass that feeling along to anybody. So by being there and adding on the services that we've done with the law firm and the financial planning and everything else, we want to be there that when a person has an issue, the first person they call is us. So, for instance, one of the clients that we worked with, they were only in their early 30s. And based on the industry, I said to the husband, look, you know what? You need life insurance. Fast forward the clock, 4 years down the track, he ended up with brain cancer. And then, you know, we worked with the family. We got his payouts. He was able to buy his family a house. That was his goal. That was what he saw as a success, was buying his wife and children a house. You know, he fought on for another 12 months. And because of the policy that we helped him get, you know, he was able to then take out the insurance policy again and had a second bite of the cherry. So he was able to leave his wife and children with some sort of form of cash flow to help them go forward. You know, that for me is huge. You know, I managed to work alongside them to achieve that, you know, and they wouldn't have done it if we hadn't sat and talked, you know, and as helping one person and not taking for granted what's there, you know, living each day and going, you know what, people get to the stage, and it's funny, you know, you work with people in their 40s and 50s and they say, oh, look, I'm too old to go run a business. I'm like, dude, you're only 50. You can't retire till 65.
Calm down. You're still above ground, mate.
Get out there and have a crack, yeah? And it's amazing watching them get out there and, you know, 18 months down the track, 2 years down the track, you're looking at what they're achieving and, you know, it's just incredible. You know, they've gone from being a one-man operation and suddenly they've got 10, 12 staff working for them. And, you know, it's just, it's awesome.
That is fantastic. Well, it has been an absolute pleasure to chat with you, to just look at how you're winning in life, you're winning in your career, you're winning in sports. It's a hat trick. And it's a real pleasure to hear how you've created this and the struggles, but also the highs that you've been through. If people want to know more about your business or they want to follow what you're doing in the sports, is there a way they can sort of follow you, get in touch with you, or go to your website? You can let us know. You can announce that here if you like.
Yeah, 100%. So if you go to our website, devennypain.com.au, there's usually a blog and a Facebook link there, and we put posts and things up through that, letting them know how we're going in sport, letting them know what challenges we're coming up with, or little blogs or stories about successes that we've had. So
Amazing. You said that's
yeah,
Devenny,
devennypain.com.au.
P-A-P-A-I-N?
YNE. No,
Okay, Pain.
PAYNE.
Got it.
Yeah,
Got
pain.
it.
Yeah, .com.au. So, and we've got a Facebook page. So yeah, I'm happy to talk to anybody. Happy to share the story and see how we can help.
Fantastic. Well, we wish you all the best in your endeavors and your goals, and also your family who are strongly following in your footsteps with their ambitions as well. So, all the best, James. Thank you so much for joining us today.
My pleasure. Thank you very much for having me on.
Have a good one. Bye for now.
You too.
Wow. I mean, when you see someone who has been through those types of challenges, I mean, I can't imagine what it was like at 7. I was still playing with Cindy and Barbie and whatever else, and riding my bike at that age. And to think that you would know from that age that you would eventually become legally blind, and to kind of have that hanging over your head throughout your entire life, and you can feel it progressing day by day, month by month, year by year, that strength, and then to become so successful. And of course, like he said, he has his ups and his downs, but he had that support group. He had his wife to help lift him up in those times. All those things are so important, but his attitude is really what has allowed him to become the man that he is today. And I think it's absolutely fantastic. And I think if we can just take even a tiny element of his mindset and his attitude towards life that he's drawn from sport, that he's drawn from his experience, and put that into our own life, inject that as fuel into our own way of thinking, then like him, we will also have a win. So I hope that you've enjoyed this episode. Like, share, follow. Remember, there's much more going on behind the scenes here than just interviews. There's a lot going on to help athletes before, during, and after their careers. Athletes like James, who may have needed more equipment or more support in their endeavors, and that isn't always there. A lot of people think it's just automatically provided, but a lot of athletes pay for a lot of the things they need to succeed in their career on their own. So there's a lot that needs to be done to really help athletes be the best that they can be. So don't forget to go to www.globalsportschannel.com and www.loveathletes.com. Until we meet again, people, ciao for now.